This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on Prevention of Communal Violence Bill. The participants are Professor Rizwan Kaisar, Jamia Millia Islamia, and T.R. Ramachandran, Senior Journalist.
The Union Cabinet at its meeting yesterday adopted the new bill renamed the Prevention of Communal Violence, Access to Justice and Reparations Bill 2013. The Union government, led by the Congress, wants to definitely bring the bill before the Rajya Sabha before the winter session of Parliament is concluded. There is hardly any time for the bill to be discussed, and it's possible that it may not be passed in the current session itself. Nevertheless, the government has made an effort to remove all those clauses which have been opposed by the BJP as well as several other parties which have raised objections that the bill in its current form would violate the federal structure of the Constitution. The BJP has categorically said that they would oppose the bill as many of the provisions are destructive and takes away the powers of the states. Several chief ministers are also opposed to this bill, which includes the chief ministers of the BJP-led states as well as the chief minister of West Bengal, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, and the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Ms. J. Jayalalitha. Mr. Rizwan, how do you see this entire bill and its provision vis-a-vis the federal structure being affected?
Opposition has come from two distinct quarters. One, in the earlier form of the bill, it was said that the owners of any communal violence would be on the majority community. It was presumed that all the victims would necessarily come from groups known as minority groups. And then there was a lot of hue cry, not only from political parties but also civil society groups and all that, is that such a form is not likely to bring in that kind of healthy element in controlling communal rights, violence of the kind that country has unfortunately been experiencing.
But this particular clause has now been removed from the bill.
Now, I do not see much ground for opposing it in terms of owners being on one as against another. Still BJP is opposed to it and other political parties are opposed to it. On federal ground, they say that even though in the amended form, the centre will not have overriding powers to intervene in the event of communal violence breaking out in a particular state, because that part has been considerably diluted. But they said that National Human Rights Commission would still have overriding powers to intervene to ensure that justice is done in the context of communal violence taking place.
And they would also have the powers to inquire into the incident.
Not only inquire, they would also require, the different states to have their regional version of the Human Rights Commission and then work in tandem, whereas National Human Rights Commission would have an overriding kind of view on it. There is number two, that holding bureaucracy or administration accountable for any breaking out of violence of the kind. And then also understanding the entire scenario in terms of command structure. Whether Officer X had his command structure or her command structure in order to ensure that communal violence did not take place. Holding that person accountable, that is also being made a little diluted. Third, in the name of federal structure, any opposition to the present form of bill is fair enough to argue in favor of the federal structure of our constitution and the entire political structure that the country has. However, every state government and every political party worth its name in this country will have to ensure two things. Number one, communal rights do not take place, they don't break out at frequency that it does in India, with intensity as it does from time to time. Muzaffarnagar riots are a case in point. Terrible violence has erupted. We all know that thousands and thousands of people are still languishing in relief camps where infants and children are dying. In that situation, I think Centre has a not only moral but also constitutional responsibility, because communal violence is not the kind of violence that we experience in other contexts. Communal violence has a bearing on national integrity. Centre has a bit of an overriding power. It hardly matters because it's centre which is responsible for maintaining the unity and integrity of the nation rather than any state government or for that matter any political formation.
That has been the primary objection, that the interference of the centre in matters like this, which is a state subject, and therefore their interference will be minimal.
But failure of the state government in terms of law and order should also keep that government in the book of accountability, and then centre is well within its right to seek an accountability and therefore intervene. So to that extent, I think centre has a genuine concern, and the bill has a genuine concern to address this issue irrespective of. After all, we all know, in India, there is nothing bipartisan. In India, everything is partisan. Everything becomes victim of politics. Precisely because of this reason, we are still struggling with the problem of terrorism. We have not been able to fight the problem of terrorism precisely because we always see color of terrorism, and therefore centre has certain responsibility and should intervene.
I think that's a very important point that you have raised, and I think many political parties are also slowly veering around to the issue that the centre should have some supervision over the states in matters like this. But nevertheless, I think the centre, in amending this bill to suit the demands of the opposition, has clearly watered down what it had originally proposed. But it just doesn't end with pointing or according responsibility for a communal situation to bureaucrats or those who are directly under them in controlling it. But there are other provisions also which come into play, which is the National Human Rights Commission will have a role to play, as you mentioned a little while ago. This is not just the NHRC at the center, but the NHRC in the states will also see how communal harmony can be maintained, and there are no tendencies which really lead to a situation which is not really, which leads to repercussions in communities, which is not ideal for communal harmony in various contexts in different parts of the state. The other thing is the responsibility of public servants, which you touched upon briefly. But I think that is a very important issue, because there have been instances where malafide has been found to be the primary reason for a tiny spark to go out of control and leading to unfortunate deaths and killings and so on. I think Muzaffarnagar is an issue and point which you have also touched upon. And also the powers of intervention in the centre in the event of riots. This has been diluted, which you have mentioned, but you have also gone on to say that there should be some element where the centre should be able to intervene in the larger interest of the unity and integrity of the country.
We have a number of examples where a strong political leadership, having conveyed a very powerful message to bureaucracy and the police apparatuses, no communal rights shall be tolerated ever. Let me tell you, the civil servants and police officers will go out of their way to ensure that no such thing ever happens. Where does the problem arise? Problem arises when there is a confused signal from the political establishment. They are not very clear in their own head as to what kind of signal they wish to continue, they wish to pass on. In case of, once again, a case in point is Muzaffarnagar. The trouble has been brewing for the last 6 months. Mr. Akhilesh Yadav's government in Uttar Pradesh should have woken up to this realization right at the start of it, that something is wrong. Certain developments which had not been taking place in the past had started taking place. That means the communal cauldron had started simmering. And this simmering of the communal cauldron was allowed to boil, and then it boiled over. Only when it boiled over, then everybody intervened. How can so many houses be burned down to ashes? How can so many hundreds and thousands of people can be uprooted, whether Hindus or whether Muslims? That is not the question. The question is that they are after all citizens of India. And has the constitution failed them? And is it not the responsibility of the parliament? And is it not the responsibility of the central government along with the state government to ensure that the constitutional guarantee to right to life is upheld? If the political establishment is given to a strong will, no such thing. Let me tell you, my personal observation and reading and experience tells me that nothing of the kind would happen. At least not of the kind of scale. Yes, impromptu certain things may happen, but that can also be immediately brought under control, provided there is a will all around. And what this particular bill proposes to do is to ensure that everybody has the adequate will, else the centre shall intervene. But that has already been watered down. But then at least we have a respectable body such as NHRC, National Human Rights Commission, which is empowered to intervene in such situation. let this be.
This was first brought about in 2005, and now after a lapse of 8 years, no less than 8 years, this is sought to be brought back. Can you really throw the onus, as it was mentioned in the bill which has now been watered down, that the onus of responsibility should go entirely to the majority community in the first instance?
No, I don't think that was the correct position. As I said right in the beginning, many civil society groups had taken a critical view of it. He said this is not the way, because after all, when communal riots break out, it takes two hands to clap. One is strong, one weak, the other is strong and the first one weak. That could be the situation, but it takes two hands to clap. For communal situation to arise in kind and types that we have seen over the years, it happens precisely because of the lack of communication, misunderstanding, undue apprehension, fear of the future. It could also be the political game plan. In case of Muzaffarnagar, it is far too evident for anyone to directly comment upon and directly pinpoint fingers against one or the other. It's been politically designed. And all those involved parties, they all understand that this particular situation is suiting them well. But then unfortunate part, that we consciously allow these things to take place, and then we seek accountability from the civil servants and the police officers and others. They are doing their job. They would do their job, and in case they don't do their job, they should be removed, replaced, or whatever. There is 1,000 mechanism in place for us to. But then, as I said, and I go back to my original position.
But shouldn't politicians be held responsible for this?
I said the political establishment, that's the government led by a particular party, a chief minister and the minister of home affairs, and everybody should be held accountable for any communal violence. But that part has not really come in the bill.
Taking the Muzaffarnagar incident into focus, which is very, very unfortunate. I don't think anybody, anywhere in its saner moments can ever forgive and forget it. But the fact that it happened. And there are some facts and figures which have been released by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Communal clashes in UP have had a big impact on the situation across. This is what they believe. Violence has spread across the country, and the centre is keen on pushing the Communal Violence Bill in the ongoing session. This is one of the primary reasons that this has been resurrected. Now, the other thing is the controversial registration, which was brought about for the first time in 2005. In taking it through, the Union Cabinet approved it yesterday, and now it is likely to come to the Rajya Sabha before the end of the session. In any case, it is come. And they have found that in a 3-year span, the communal violence has increased not from 2 digits to 3 digits. Somewhere between 70 to 80 3 years ago to about 265 at present. Don't you think this itself is alarming? How do you look at it?
2-3 things. One, let there be a consensus among all the political formations across India, thus far and no further. Irrespective of anybody's volition, communal politics will not be allowed to take place. Number 2, there should be a systematic campaign at the level of school education, systematic campaign at the level of, media campaign, and also at the level of the university, and in general the political campaign, to ensure that the communities do not develop unnecessary apprehension against each other. Not treat the fellow citizen may belong to a particular religion as necessarily inimical to the national interest, as it has unfortunately been the case from time to time. Community X is projected as not in tune with the larger concerns of nation building exercise, etc. If we have all this, then I'm sure that the communal violence bill in the form that we see, in times to come, it may acquire more teeth. In times to come, it may not even be required to be there in place. All will depend, how do we build our society? Unfortunately, they have shown, there was time when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru had ensured it personally that such things would not be broke, and he was quite successful. India is still yearning to see the leadership of the kind that Pandit Nehru gave independent India. Maybe that would be one way of solving the problem. Till that happens, maybe such legislative measures, to my mind, is always a welcome step.
Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Rizwan.
You are listening to a discussion on Prevention of Communal Violence Bill. The participants were Professor Rizwan Kaisar, Jamia Millia Islamia, and T.R. Ramachandran, senior journalist. It came to you in the program News Analysis, produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website news.on.air.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.